Last night I got an email from a podcast listener named Brian, and Brian was asking about whether a spousal RSP might make sense in his situation, being a high income earner and having a lot of RRSPs in his own name, and whether he should have some money in his spouse's name. And so instead of sending an email, I thought, let's just shoot off a video here and hopefully it'll be valuable for somebody else too. So this is a situation that I was able to do with clients of my own who are in a similar situation, but we were able to take spousal RSP money and convert it into tax-free money out the back end, and then use that to contribute to their TFSAs, keeping it tax-free forever. So here's how we did it. All right, and so here's the situation with my clients, Curtis and Cynthia. It's not their real names, but the situation is very real, and we've been able to do this strategy for a number of years with them. And so throughout their lives, Curtis was a high income earner and Cynthia was low income in most years, no income in other years. She worked outside of the home, but mostly to stay busy and be involved with things that were important to her. Curtis was the main breadwinner for the household, and his tax rate at the time of the spousal RSP contribution was about 50%, give or take. So the way that a spousal RSP works is that it uses the contributor's tax rate to get a deduction, but the money is then invested in the other spouse's name. So in this case, the money was in Cynthia's name, but Curtis got the deduction. So when he made the contribution, he still needs to have the room, so it uses his RSP room. So he made the contribution and got 50% deduction from it. The money then went into Cynthia's name, and then it accumulated from there. Later on, Curtis, he reduced his workload in future years, and he didn't have as high of a tax rate, and so doing spousals didn't really make a whole lot of sense anymore. But anyways, the money was already in there. And because they did this for a number of years and made pretty significant contributions for a while, by the time Cynthia got to her retirement date, there was about $350,000 in the account. Give or take, I'm using round numbers just to make it easier for the sake of the video here. So we've got $350,000. Now, if we wanted to get that money out, one of the cleanest ways to do it is to convert a spousal RSP into a spousal RRIF. A RRIF is just the second life of an RRSP, and once you convert it to a RRIF, now that bucket of money now has a hole in it, and you have to take some money out of it every year. And so in her case, her minimum based on her age was 4%. So 4% had to come out of the account. Now, before I go too much further, there's a few wrinkles with spousal RSP accounts. And the main one that you have to be aware of is something called spousal attribution, because I'm sure if your wheels are turning, you might be thinking of situations where you might even have single years where one of you might be a high income earner and your spouse might be low income, and you say, okay, well, why don't I just put money in and then take it out right away? Well, there's a 3-year rule on making withdrawals and having that income be attributed to the lower income spouse. And so you have to either plan ahead using spousal RSPs for your retirement income, ahead long enough where you stop making contributions up until about 3 years before you want to make a withdrawal, or we do what we did here with Curtis and Cynthia, and you take the minimum. So the way to avoid the income attribution rules from a spousal RRIF is to take the minimum amount out of the account only. If you take more than that and you've contributed in the last 3 years, that income can be attributed back to the high income spouse, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. But in their case, about $350,000, we converted that to a RRIF. The 4% minimum came out. So we got the 4% minimum, and there's no withholding taxes on the minimum. If you've seen some of my recent videos, I've talked about withholding taxes a lot. And in this case, withholding tax isn't an additional tax, it's not a separate tax, it's just a prepayment of taxes you're likely to owe on that money. However, if you take the minimum out of a RRIF or a spousal RRIF, there's no minimum, or there's no withholding taxes applicable in that case. And in their situation, it was particularly valuable because Cynthia didn't have any employment income, no government benefits in those years, or anything like that. And so she didn't have any other sources of taxable income. And so her personal exemption is in the ballpark of $15,000. If we're doing the math here, $350,000, 4% minimum, is about $14,000 that came out of the account, but that was also within her personal exemption. And so there's no income taxes owing on that money. So she had a pretty big account. We converted to a spousal RRIF to take the annual minimum amount out of the account. And we did that, we set it up for a January withdrawal. And so that money came out of the account, and lo and behold, $14,000 for a couple sounds like a nice, perfect number. Turns out it actually was. This is kind of serendipity here more than like perfect planning. It just happened to work out really smoothly. Obviously there was dollars and cents and it wasn't exactly this amount, but it was pretty close actually. So $14,000 came out, no withholding taxes, so we didn't have to worry about taking any additional for that. And there's no taxes owing on it because it will fit within her personal exemption. And so what we were able to do is take that $14,000 and put that towards each of their TFSA accounts, of which they both had $7,000 of additional room due to the new year rolling over. So even though they only had one income, they were able to live off Curtis's income for their day-to-day needs and everything like that, but to continue to contribute to TFSAs under a situation like that, using the spousal RRSP and then a spousal RRIF to get the minimums out tax-free, we were able to convert 50% tax money, so money that he would have earned at 50%, we got a big 50% deduction on it. That money then grew and we were able to take it out of the account tax-free, and then because of the TFSA room that they had, we were able to contribute that money to their TFSAs and keep that money tax-free forever while they're invested, while they're alive, and then once they pass it on to their kids, if they don't end up using it during their lifetime, it remains tax-free. So we had a person with a very high income, and we were able to use long-term planning to eventually get that money out to them tax-free and keep it tax-free for as long as possible. If this strategy sounded interesting to you, I'd appreciate if you like this video and maybe share it with a friend who might find it interesting as well. And if you've never done financial planning that looked anything close to something like this, feel free to click on the link below to become a client. There's a little questionnaire that you can fill out to let me know more about your situation, and we'll get in touch and see if it's a good fit to work together. But either way, I appreciate you watching the video, and I will catch you on the next one. Take care.